Hello and welcome to this review of my Nuphy or NuPhy or however you're supposed to pronounce the name, Field75 HE keyboard. Before I start the review, I'd like to draw your attention to the upcoming Q&A/AMA video I'm doing for my 10-year YouTube anniversary. If you've got any questions, put them in the thread in the link in the video description below. As probably deserves no mention, the Field75HE is a 75% keyboard with Hall effect switches, and it's situated somewhere in the mid-budget category. In some ways this is pretty generic, except for all the gubbins on the side and bottom here, and it's because of that I decided to take this keyboard on board. So let's have a look. First, we're going to start off with the build quality. The case might look like it's made out of metal, but it's not. It's all plastic. I think the carry handle is, and a few embellishments here and there as well, but the main structure is plastic with an aluminium plate. And the weight kind of reflects that, being a bit above average at just under 1.1 kilos. Or in imperial units, 2.38 avoirdupois pounds, 2.90 troy pounds, 3.08 tower pounds, 2.47 merchant pounds, 2.31 London pounds, or 2.16 metric pounds for if you really can't make up your mind about what system to use. It's built very tautly, though it does flex a fair bit. It's not too bad, I've seen worse, but it's not great either. However, like so many modern keyboards, you can't really disassemble it, which, though I've stopped reporting it every time I see it, I've never stopped hating. At least the board is hot swappable, so that takes the edge off of it a bit. The keycaps are double-shot PBT. I don't know if they make them in-house, but they look fairly cheaply made, with the letters having visibly inconsistent size, which has to do with how well the outer and inner shot settle around each other. It's not too bad though, plus double-shot PBT is the best type you can get, and I really like the font and the letter size. The color scheme isn't really anything to write home about, but it fits the chassis, I guess. There is also a non-HE version of this keyboard, which comes with 4 completely different color schemes, but not this one. The HE version only comes in this color. As you can see, they went for non-transparent legends. This has pros and cons mainly related to the backlighting. It's not so easy to do proper see-through legends on double shots in my experience, and transparent legends can be difficult to read without a backlight, so honestly I don't mind this decision. You need to have really good lighting and caps for this to look good anyway. The switches are Gateron's Magnetic White dual rail HE switches. These are used by a few other brands as well. The dual rail system is used to provide increased stability, though honestly the effect is pretty negligible in my experience. That said, these are great switches, pretty light with a weight profile going from 30 to 50 grams and 4mm travel. Curiously, they also sell them with the Jade version of the same switch, which has the same travel characteristics and which is worse. The most important difference is that the Jades, not to be confused with Box Jade, which is an extremely clicky switch, have an analog window ranging to only 3.3mm, while these white ones have full analog range. They're nice to use. I'm especially happy with them as the previous board I was testing had very stiff and not very smooth switches, which wasn't very pleasant on the finger, so I'm glad I could revert to a tried and true HE switch. Nuphy do appear to have really gone to town on the HE-ness of this board. They correctly went with adjustable actuation, which is now the de facto standard of endgame linears as far as I'm concerned. They also went all in with the gaming potential attached with analog switches, including their own version of the rapid trigger function, which was recently in the news again, and as much as an 8,000 Hz polling rate, which I can only describe as ludicrous overkill. 8,000 Hz in fact seems to be the new 1000 Hz, which was already ludicrous when that came out. Still, switch-wise, the keyboard has what it needs. They're light, super smooth, pleasant to use, and adjustable. As far as I'm concerned, that's what you need for it to be top tier in the linear category. By default, they're programmed to actuate at 1.5mm, which is too sensitive for me, but it's a piece of piss to switch it to 2 or maybe 2.2mm instead, which fixes the issue. Finally, let's have a look at all these extra bits and bobs they added here. I'm not going to say much about the carry handle, as that can only be described as a gimmick, I think, much like that carrying strap that Wooting uses on the 60HE, or the handle on the Keyblade. I just don't see a use for it other than looking fancy. which I should comment on for a second, because obviously this sort of look is going to be polarizing. Now, while I don't think it's a beautiful keyboard or anything, I honestly don't mind the styling with the bits and bobs. It's over the top in a cutesy sort of way, like a Lamborghini. Not that I want to equate this to a Lambo, far from it, but you get my point. It's the ridiculousness of it. Apart from the handle, it's also got a volume dial, curiously posted on the left rather than the more traditional right side placement of something like this. I guess this was done to save on mouse space. It also looks more fancy than most volume wheels. Plus, another unusual thing about it is that it's discretized, giving a little click for every turn unit. It takes ages to wind all the way down to 0 volume, but you can press it. Furthermore, it's got 2 sets of 4 G-labeled keys at the side and bottom here, which are basically macro keys. Now, these come with tacked buttons rather than real key switches, so they don't feel the same, but it's always useful to have macro keys, I guess. That said, their placement is very suboptimal. I found out almost immediately that just having your hand on the WASD cluster like this makes you press the G4 and G5 keys here and here almost constantly. So you can't really bind these to anything, or you'll be accidentally triggering these all the time. So that's effectively 2 buttons fewer. I unbound them immediately. I also unbound the Windows key, naturally, as it's a negative key that should never be on the keyboard, at least not in this position, and I also rectified the print key here, which by default opens the snipping tool rather than an actual print screen. I know a lot of you young'uns like the snipping tool, but for an old school guy like me, it's print screen all the way. Also, if you're wondering, this key here is delete. So for once, a space-saving layout where they kept both the print screen, well, sorta, and the delete key. Hallelujah, my prayers have been answered for once. Finally, there's this wheel which controls the brightness of the backlight, and this rather stiff 3-position switch here which controls the profile, so you can switch between 3 layouts on the fly, useful for if you have very specific gaming layouts. Neither the wheel, nor the volume roller, nor the selector switch can be programmed though, so keep that in mind. Speaking of programming, it's done via a website, not downloadable software. I can only hope my years-long whinging about software packages is paying off, as this is not the first company I've seen it do like this. It's very easy to use and also doesn't require saving the settings or anything, they just apply immediately, which is excellent. I occasionally had problems authorizing the device to the website, but in the end it was all pretty good. I've had a few issues with keys either not registering or registering all the time after you replace the switches, but just like with the authorization thing, just replugging it fixed the issue. I like that you can see how far you're pressing a key in real time too. Again, as with many things on the keyboard, it's nothing new, but it's well done. Finally, the price point at $150 is not even expensive for an analog HE keyboard. It's not cheap, but then again these never are, so take that as you will. It is a competent board, I think, and as there are now multiple companies that offer something very similar to this, the question really comes down to whether you like the styling and or want these extra bits and bobs here. Without any major red flags, that I could find at least, it's a competent contender, I'd say. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.